Have you ever thought about what it might be like to stop drinking for a while? Taking some time off and giving the old liver a rest? If not, do me a favor and like this video anyway so the algorithm will push it to somebody who does need to see it. And if that somebody is you, stay tuned because I'm gonna share my experience after taking a year off from drinking, why I decided to do this in the first place, my biggest takeaways, and the million-dollar question: what am I gonna do now that my dry year is over? All right, let's start with why I decided to take a year off from drinking in the first place. Now, full context, I've always been a pretty frequent drinker. Starting in high school when I would drink with my friends and go to parties, like a lot of parties. Then joining the Navy and binge drinking with my buddies, turning 21, starting to go to bars, traveling overseas and getting after it with my shipmates when I was not required to be on the boat. And finally coming back home in my early 20s and making up for lost time with my old friends, starting to date, experience the nightlife, so on and so forth. It all seemed pretty standard at the time, but looking back, there was always a reason to drink for like a decade straight. Football parties, going on dates, going out with friends, happy hour after work. I didn't even really give it a second thought. It was just kind of like my worldview, I guess. People drink when they get together. But somewhere along the way, things started changing. Transitioning from my 20s into my 30s, instead of bar hopping with my friends on the weekend, I was at home on the couch watching movies with my wife. Instead of going to happy hour with the fellas after work, I was coming home and playing with my daughters. But I was just so used to drinking. So the situations that warranted the drinking were less and less and less, but the frequency of my drinking pretty much stayed the same. And then I started to get some signs that maybe it was becoming a problem. The first thing that put drinking on the radar was about 2 years ago when I cracked open a mineral water when I was fasting, and Kennedy, who was 3 at the time, came up and asked me, "Dad, is that a beer?" I didn't even realize she knew what beer was. Now that alone wasn't enough to make me want to quit drinking, but it was the first indication that Kennedy was watching my every move, even when I thought she was oblivious to some of the things I was doing on a regular basis. The next sign, we'll call it, came on my birthday when I noticed that although I have what I would consider a ton of hobbies and interests, I noticed that everybody who came to my party brought me booze as a birthday present. And I've heard, people say, oh, alcohol is a pretty standard gift. Don't take it personally. Imagine everybody showing up to your birthday and bringing you Twinkies. Do you think that might, make you want to take it as you're a fat ass? Or what if everybody showed up to your birthday and brought you porno magazines? Do you think that might be an indication that people think that you're some sort of pervert? I rest my case. As a matter of fact, when you look at it for what it really was, in a literal sense, all of my friends and family gifted me poison for my birthday, just one at a time. Here's some poison. More poison for the collection? Oh, this is some top shelf poison right here. But what did I expect? I was poisoning myself on almost a nightly basis. So at that point, I guess you could say not only did I realize my daughter was watching me, but maybe I did have a problem after all. I decided it was time to cut back. Only it wasn't that easy. You see, Amy and I now had 3 little girls, including a 3-year-old and twin newborn daughters. It was a tough year. Every day I would tell myself, I'm not gonna drink tonight, but around 4 o'clock when work was over and it was family time, AKA screaming babies, a toddler that needs constant attention, crying, shitting, puking, I always ended up justifying having a few drinks to take the edge off. And then taking the edge off quickly became hitting the fast forward button, meaning I'd drink until I was able to fully escape the situation entirely, wake up the next day, and the screaming and crying was over. And my first thoughts every single morning went something like this: do I remember going to bed? If not, what is the last thing that I do remember? How much time was left in the night when that happened? Did I piss Amy off? Oh, my head kinda hurts. My breath tastes like stale whiskey. I'm not drinking tonight no matter what. All day I would think about not drinking that night. And then 4 o'clock would inevitably hit, babies would start crying and screaming, Mickey Mouse Club would play on repeat, and I'd be reminded of why I drank every night in the first place, to escape. The same cycle continued for months and months and months, to the point I gave up trying to cut back altogether. I embraced it, justified, saying things like, man, you gotta do what you gotta do to survive this. It's understandable, you've got a lot on your plate right now. Before I knew it, almost a year had passed and the twins were about to turn 1. Amy had a funny idea to get family pictures taken where she'd be drinking a glass of wine, I'd be drinking straight out of the bottle, and Kennedy would be drinking juice, and we'd all be behind a sign that said, "We survived a year with twins." The day that picture came back was the day that changed everything for me. Me, the man of the family, downing a bottle of wine as my beautiful 4-year-old who looks to me for guidance copies my every move. 2 little angels, perfect gifts from God, sitting on my lap being ignored because I would rather be chasing a buzz than giving them any attention whatsoever. A loving wife by my side that needed a partner to carry the load, not just a liability. The most beautiful family I could ever ask for, and a complete lack of gratitude or appreciation of any sort. I was disgusted with myself. I started to think how many times we had the girls out by the pool. What if I wasn't paying attention and something tragic happened? Or what if an emergency happened at 10 p.m. and I was too drunk to drive whoever needed me to the hospital? That was the moment I decided to draw a line in the sand and say enough was enough. Luckily, I had a client in Ireland at the time who had been sober for the better part of 7 years, so I reached out to him and told him that I wanted to commit to taking a year off from drinking starting on the twins' birthday, which was just a week away at the time. I gave him my word that if I ever felt tempted to drink, I would pick up the phone and call him before I did it. This is important. Anybody considering taking a year off from drinking, I cannot stress this enough. Find somebody you respect, who you don't want to let down, to commit to and give them your word as a man. Somebody that will hold you accountable. This was the biggest factor for me getting the momentum going long enough to actually be able to see this thing through. Now, everybody is going to be different, but I'm giving you the God's honest truth. Quitting alcohol was extremely easy for me. I'd love to stand here and flex my man card talking about how I persevered and the battles I faced. Not at all. I was in so much internal anguish from finally seeing the reality of the situation for what it really was, that I stopped looking at alcohol as my little buddy that got me through the evening and made dinner dates more enjoyable. And I started seeing it as an entity that wanted to break up my family, ruin my business, send me to an early grave and leave my kids without a dad. And if it really got its way, perpetuate itself into the lives of my kids and haunt them like it had haunted me someday. Now, cutting out drinking doesn't mean you become a recluse. I went on a few guys' trips, attended a couple events, had all the standard date nights and get-togethers with friends and family. And unless you're hanging out with total losers, nobody really gives a shit if you're not drinking. I would even go as far to say as the vast majority of people respect it, assuming that you're confident in yourself. Now, if you come off and say things like, oh, I wish I can't drink for 9 more months, people are gonna look at you like you probably have a problem, you sound sad, you come off like you're missing out and you're counting down the days until you can drink again. But when you can confidently look people in the eye and say, I'm good, I'm actually taking a year off, people will naturally want to hear about it and often say things like, dude, I should do something like that. So here we are, a year later. What's different? Am I in the best shape of my life? Have I 10x'd my business? Is my marriage and family life better than ever? Let me put it this way. Yes, almost everything is way better. My health, my fitness, my relationships with my family, my clients, no doubt better. And I'll make a video in the coming weeks about the top 5 or 10 benefits of not drinking. But understand, and this is gonna be tough to explain, those are all just byproducts of something much, much bigger. Having a 6-pack, a thriving business, a great family, they're all blessings, but at the end of the day, if you feel shackled by an addiction that haunts you on a daily basis, whether it's booze, nicotine, porn, food, whatever it is, then in my experience, no amount of external success will even really mean that much to you. It'll all feel kind of empty. But on the flip side, if you're winning the internal battles, even if external circumstances do affect any of those areas negatively, an injury, the economy, some freak accident, whatever happens, as long as you can look in the mirror and say, I'm taking the necessary steps to work on myself, to rid myself of these bad habits, and I don't care what kind of tests are thrown at me, I'm building some serious momentum towards seeing this thing through. It truly is the best feeling in the world. Better than ripped abs, better than having $1 million in your bank account. It's truly everything. As a matter of fact, there's no amount of material or external success that would tempt me at all if it meant going back to how I was feeling when I was at my lowest just over a year ago. So what everybody who's thinking about taking a year off is probably curious about, am I going to start drinking again? You know, nothing crazy, but maybe a margarita on Taco Tuesdays, a couple glasses of wine at family dinner, of course, holidays, get-togethers, special occasions, football games, office parties, date nights, brunches, barbecues, bachelor parties, weddings, vacations, after a really bad day, after a really good day, starting to see a pattern. So as it stands right now, I think I'm good. If you are thinking about taking some time off of alcohol, please send me a private message and let's connect. As much as I want you to lose the stubborn belly fat and get absolutely shredded, I'd go as far as to say that this is a much bigger win and will be more important if you do think you have some sort of substance abuse problem. So let's connect. I'm happy to help any way I can. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you very soon.